Hi, everybody. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas, Texas on Tuesday, October the 8th. And welcome to our commentary. I think I'm fighting a little bit of an allergy here, so bear with me as we go through this today. But anyway, just a quick note. I just saw this on the sports pages. As you know, the baseball postseason is underway, and there's four games or four matches going on, four contests. And this is the first time in the history of postseason play that all four divisional games are tied up at 1-1. Pretty interesting situation. And I have a feeling that one of these, maybe two of these series, are going to go 5 games. Perhaps all of them will go 5 games because these are really very competitive teams. And I think they're playing each other quite well. Very exciting games, actually, to follow this year. So I have a feeling that at least three of them will go 5 games. One of them will probably go four, or maybe all of them will go five. I just think they're very good teams. But anyway, we'll keep an eye on it today and for the rest of the week as these series unfold. Well, I have a post over at the American Thinker today. You can check it out, americanthinker.com. And it has to do with Kamala Harris. And the remarks by Andrea Mitchell of NBC on Sunday, where she basically said, Kamala Harris needs to change. Her campaign has to change. They're going to have to start doing more serious interviews because she's having a real problem with men. And it isn't just white men. You expect white men to vote Republican. They've been doing so for, pretty much going back to Reagan. They have been a very solid Republican bloc. But what is happening now is that apparently it's not just white men. Hispanic men, black men are also joining in, creating a pretty significant voting bloc. And the main reason they don't like Kamala Harris is because they don't think she's a serious candidate. The fact that she's not doing serious interviews, she's not answering questions, she's not, going out of her way to explain her positions. And, Kamala Harris, Andrea Mitchell of NBC, who, I think has been over the years, I don't recall her being very partisan. She was giving, I think, Kamala Harris some pretty straight message or advice, I think, on Sunday saying, hey, you got to change your campaign. You got to start doing more interviews. You got to start talking to people. You got to take, in a sense, I think what she was saying is you got to take the voters more seriously. They're not just going to vote for you because they hate Trump. You got to take them a little bit more seriously. So I don't know whether she took her advice or not, but Kamala Harris goes on 60 Minutes. Now, I didn't know 60 Minutes was on Monday nights. I always thought that was a Sunday night show, but I guess you learn something new every day. So she goes on 60 Minutes or CBS News, and she's being interviewed by, I can't think of the gentleman's name right now. His face is very familiar. I've seen him do interviews before, but I was not familiar with his name. But anyway, he starts asking some pretty good questions. First thing he says is, okay, let's talk about the border. And he basically says, look, under your watch, this has happened. Do you think it was a good idea to do this? And then instead of, excuse me for a second, instead of taking some responsibility for what's happened over the last 4 years, so 3.5 years, she starts talking about, well, we always wanted to fix the problem, but the Congress, didn't do what it was supposed to do. Well, first of all, for the last 4 years, in the first two, they had a Democrat Congress, a Democrat House, and a Democrat Senate, or a 50-50 Senate, but it was decided by a tiebreaker. So can't really blame the Congress for not doing anything. And then she starts talking about this, the so-called bipartisan border bill that the Republicans didn't want to pass or Donald Trump didn't want to pass. The problem is that that's just utter nonsense. There was never really a bill that the president was ready to sign. What you had was a proposal in the Senate reconcile with HR 2, the proposal in the House, and they just couldn't do it because they were so far apart. HR 2 in the House and the Senate proposal were very far apart, and they just couldn't reconcile it. So there was never really a bill for the president to sign. So to say that it's all Donald Trump's fault, that Donald Trump told, told the the Republicans don't sign this because we need a campaign issue. I mean, that's just utter nonsense. That's not the way it actually happened. But she's saying that, of course, to the reporter. Then the reporter gets into economic policy, and this is, I think, her biggest weakness, actually, because I don't think she understands how corporate taxes work. I don't think she understands all of these tax policies. I just don't think she does. She's never gotten into it before. I mean, it is complicated stuff, but I don't think she understands how it works. So, her economic policy is she's going to take care of the middle class. Okay. She's going to take care of the middle class. How are you going to do that? Well, we're going to raise taxes on the rich. How are you going to do that? Well, as I said, she's going to raise taxes on the rich. That's how she's going to give all these tax cuts to the middle class. And this is how she's going to encourage all of these small businesses that she said are the backbone of the American economy. Well, small businesses are very important in the American economy, but small businesses are happening every day in the country, and we have a middle class in the country. The problem with the middle class right now is not that the big people are not paying their fair share, as she likes to say. The problem is the inflation and all the regulation and taxation, regulation in particular, that is hurting a lot of businesses. I mean, they're regulating businesses to death, and this is to a large extent a product of Democrat governments. So she gets kind of stuck in this whole thing. Doesn't really understand who is not serious, or precisely what many of these men are saying about her. Okay, what Andrew Mitchell was saying, that the men are not serious. No, they're not serious because she's not serious. So you have this situation where the more she talks, the less likable she is and the less coherent that she is. I mean, it is amazing. I've never seen a campaign like this before. Now, Obama, back in 2008, didn't have a lot of experience either, and I don't think he understood a lot of issues either. But he did have at least the ability to speak better. Somehow he had the ability to present an idea. And, he also got very lucky, frankly, in the last 30 days of the campaign, when you had that banking crisis that pretty much froze the campaign. And he wasn't even a factor in the last 30 days of the campaign, because that banking crisis kind of took over everything. But anyway, so this lady's not in good shape. Now, she's still, I guess, technically in the margin of error if you look at these polls. But I'm beginning to think more and more that the more that people see her. Now, she was also on The View today. And once again, they asked her a question. Is there anything different that you would have done than President Biden? No, not really. Not really. I guess not really. So, so you are basically, I mean, when Trump says that, the Harris policy is the Biden policy, he's exactly right. That is correct. And she doesn't deny it. So I don't know. All I can tell you is she is, I mean, again, you look at these polls and they're both within the margin of error. And I don't deny that that's the case, but I'm beginning to think more and more that what you're going to see here in the last couple of weeks of this campaign, let's say getting pretty close to it, is I think you're going to see a movement toward Trump, because I think more and more people are going to look at this lady and they're going to say she's not ready. She's not ready for this. She doesn't really understand the issues, and she's not ready for the job that that is out there for the next president of the United States. And one of the important parts of that job is going to be, what in the world is going to happen with all these problems around the world? I mean, we could be fighting a war here pretty soon in different parts of the world. I mean, the country needs or the international situation needs to be stabilized. And I just don't think that Kamala Harris can do that, because I don't think our opponents, our adversaries, are going to respect her any more than a lot of Americans do. So I just, I see her candidacy falling apart, and I wouldn't be surprised if in the last couple of weeks of the election, you start seeing a movement toward Trump. He's not going to win by a landslide. That's not going to happen because of the demographics of the country and because of California. She's still going to get a pretty big popular vote. But I see Trump, I see the battleground states, as they like to call them, moving more and more in the direction of Donald Trump. But this lady does not help herself when she goes on TV. She really doesn't. help herself at all. Let me close today by talking about Louis Tiant. Now, those of you who are baseball fans, you may remember Louis Tiant, who pitched with the Red Sox. He actually began with the Cleveland Indians, then became very famous with the Red Sox in the 70s. Eventually, I think he retired as a Yankee the last couple of years, but his big years, the years that we knew him, was in the 1970s with the Red Sox. And of course, the 1975 World Series, where he was one of the prime players in that unbelievably great series. But Louis Tiant passed away today. Now, I have a special connection to Louis Tiant because he was born in Cuba. His father was also a great pitcher in Cuban history. His father was actually a very successful pitcher here in the United States in the old Negro Leagues. He was a very famous left-hander in the old Negro Leagues. And then Louis Tiant came to the United States in the early 60s and started pitching with Cleveland, ended up eventually with the Red Sox in the 70s. That's, as I said before, that's where he got most of his fame, and that's where, everybody remembers him in the World Series. But one thing about Louis Tiant is if you grew up watching him as I did, one of the things that he was famous for was that windup. He had this crazy windup where it looked like he had come to a stop when he was, winding, throwing the pitch in. He had this crazy body movement that completely frustrated the batters. And if you see some of the films or some of the videos of his career, you can see batters just frozen. They didn't know where the ball was coming from or what direction, because of his body movement. He was up here, but the ball was here. It was just an absolutely amazing pitcher that he was. Now, he's not in the Hall of Fame. He won 229 games. He's not in the Hall of Fame. Now, for years, I have argued that he should be in the Hall of Fame. And in fact, every year, when they have the veterans, when they do the Veterans Committee and they go back and they put people in the Hall of Fame, every year I have argued that he should be in the Hall of Fame, that Louis Tiant should be in the Hall of Fame. I think he was good enough to be in the Hall of Fame, 229 wins, all those complete games that he threw. And he was just a great clutch pitcher. I mean, if you needed a game to win, Louis Tiant was one of the pitchers you give the ball to. And one of his most memorable games was game 4 or game 5, 4 or 5 of the 1975 World Series, when the Red Sox really needed to tie up the series. They were down 2-1, and they really needed him to pitch well. So he went out there and he threw 10 innings, 163 pitches. I mean, think about that, 163 pitches. He threw a complete game, and the Red Sox won the game, tying the series. And it's considered by many to be one of the guttiest pitching performances ever, particularly in the World Series, where the Red Sox really needed that game and their bullpen was completely exhausted, and they really needed Louis to go out and pitch a complete game. He did. And not only did he pitch a complete game, he pitched 10 innings, 163 pitches. Wow. That's a gutsy guy. They don't today, 163 pitches, you get 5 pitchers to do that, or 2, maybe 3, or maybe 2 in a game. So Louis Tiant, who was born in Marianao, Cuba, in 1940, passed away today. I'm not exactly sure where he was living these days, but I know it's in the United States, maybe in Massachusetts, I'm not sure. Maybe in Florida, I'm not sure. But I have so many memories of him, watching him on TV. And I did see him live a couple of times. And that windup that he had was just, you looked at it and you go, wow, how can he pitch? Well, he did. And he pitched extremely well over the years. So rest in peace, Louis Tiant, one of my all-time favorites, pitchers in the major leagues. Well, thank you for listening. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas, and we'll talk to you later. Bye-bye, everybody.